Let's say I was developing an app, and I wanted this app to be able to tell stories, and maybe even write books of its own one day. But in order to do this, I had to feed it as many books and stories as possible in order for it to write anything coherent, let alone good. Let's say that in order to accomplish that, I walked into a bookstore like this one and started pulling books off the shelves and feeding it to that app without paying for the books or giving credit to anyone involved in the process, from writing to publishing to designing to anything in between. And then I turned around and I made this app publicly available so that you could have the gift of personalized stories for free and profited off of that. That sounds illegal. That would probably be illegal, right? Right? This is essentially what Meta and Anthropic are alleged to have done. And we know this because they've been caught doing it and sued for it. And I guess Anthropic has tacitly admitted it since they recently came to a settlement with a group of authors. If you're curious, you can see for yourself whose books got sucked up by using the tools provided in the link below. The Atlantic's reporting in particular is how I found out that 3 of my own books have been sucked into Meta's training data for their large language model. One of them twice somehow. The twist? None of these books are currently available for sale. If my books were intentionally unpublished years before AI chatbots were even around, then how did they end up getting used to train the models? How does this impact the arts? And perhaps more importantly, how does this impact the rest of us? This video is sponsored by people like Deborah J. Ball, but more on that at the end of the video. The answer to the first question, how did this even happen, is decidedly simple. Good old-fashioned piracy. But it raises another question, which is, why? Large language models are elaborate prediction algorithms doing their best to predict what word is most likely to follow another within a given context. The quality of the output is directly impacted by the quality of the input, what's referred to as training data. In order to make the best chatbot possible, you need to give it examples of as many essays, conversations, and stories as possible so it can effectively emulate them. But where do you come up with that kind of volume? You can scrape the entirety of the internet, which they did, but we've seen what's on the internet. So how do you make up for a decided lack in quality? It turns out internet pirates came up with a solution to this for them years ago, and I'm referring to Meta in particular, according to the reporting from The Atlantic. All they needed to do was download the world's largest pirated library, filled not just with books, but academic papers one would normally need to pay to read. I've said this publicly before, but to be clear, I am not wholly opposed to piracy. I don't want money to be a reason that you don't read my books. If times are tight and you can't afford them for whatever reason, I'd rather you pirated them. While I do need to make a living and I would love to make a killing, and not paying me for my work does prevent me from doing even more of it, sharing my work is more important to me than squeezing you for every last penny. I'm a fan of piracy under certain circumstances. One of the world's most valuable companies taking my books to turn them into a new product without even giving credit for their own profit is not one of them. According to internal communications released in the midst of legal proceedings, Meta is alleged to have known exactly what they were doing the entire time. They even brought up the fact that if they were to pay licensing fees to a single author, they'd be setting a precedent that they'd need to pay everyone for their work. Easier to steal it all and see if they could get away with it. One of the world's most valuable companies intentionally stole from every author you've ever loved and every academic who advanced our base of knowledge. Allegedly. If this doesn't seem wrong to you, I'm not sure I can convince you otherwise, but what I want to spend the rest of this video explaining is how it impacts me personally and how I think it impacts you just as directly. If you need a quick catch-up on how AI slop is threatening the future of the internet as a whole, Kurzgesagt just released a fantastic video about the very real dangers facing us as a society because of generative AI. And I am specifically talking about generative AI in this video. There are things currently being marketed as AI that I think are genuinely useful. We have even partnered with one of those apps to power our audio walking tours in Paris, which is a significant level up from simply pressing play on an audio file. And I do think the future could be made better through creating genuine artificial general intelligence. I am not against AI as a concept, unless it decides to exterminate us. But so little of what we're being fed as AI is anything more than marketing hype. There's plenty about this that has me concerned. So much has already been said about this, you probably don't need me to bring you up to speed, but it has been slowly crushing my soul. When I was a kid in the US, one of the frequent arguments against communism went something like this. Imagine taking a class full of students. One works really hard and gets an A, most don't put in a lot of effort and get B's and C's, and a few really lazy students don't study at all and fail the test. If communism takes points from the student who worked hard and redistributes them to the lazy students to bring their grades up, how is that fair? I came to realize as an adult that this was an oversimplified, if not willfully ignorant argument to make about fairness, particularly because of the word lazy, but it stuck with me as one of the great rallying cries of capitalism. Don't take the fruits of one group's labor and give it to another lesser deserving group. I'm not saying I agree. What I'd like to point out, however, is who makes this kind of argument. In order to make one of these YouTube videos, it requires anywhere from a few days to a few months. The last video I made for Piracy, my.pocket took me 6 weeks to put together. And this video, I have rewritten this video probably 8 times, and I've been working on it for something in the range of like 5 months now, at least just thinking on it, writing, and trying to put it together. Even the videos that take me less time to make, like French cultural videos, may only require an hour of writing, 30 minutes of recording, a couple hours of editing, and then a few hours making a thumbnail, uploading and posting it across platforms. But the reason I'm able to sit down and do that quickly is because I have made literally thousands of videos at this point. I've dedicated tens of thousands of hours to honing my ability to speak on camera, to frame a decent shot, to edit, and to distribute. That isn't even counting the decade of living in France that goes into informing a video on its culture, or all the time spent learning how to build a business from the ground up so it supports me. So it supports the people who now rely on me to pay them. I've only recently figured out how to make this viable at all. It's not only hard and time consuming to make what you're watching right now, but I've spent most of my career under deep financial stress just trying to scrape by. I don't share that because I'm looking for pity. This is the road that I chose. There is no quick path to creative success, and without pre-existing wealth and support, there probably is no comfortable one either. I'm okay with this. It has been wonderful and horrible all at once, and I have learned so much. Here's the problem then, and the question I would pose directly to the people controlling these companies. How is it fair that 15 years of writing books and nearly a decade of full-time video production for YouTube should get sucked up by these companies and used to make money generating content they intend to use not just for their own profit, but to compete directly with me? I was hoping that the trade-off for spending a decade in poverty as a struggling artist was a big payoff at the end. That payoff may be coming, but it feels like it's not going to get paid out to me. I've been working on a new book. I mean, I'm never not working on a new book. I'm always thinking of one or the other, making notes, talking to my editor, fantasizing in the shower, you get it. But I've been working on a follow-up to the one book that you can still buy legally about how I got to Paris, Sea of the Unknown. And you might be thinking, I'm worried that it will get stolen too, that people could prompt ChatGPT to produce chapters from this, or maybe recreate the whole thing. Given how prone errors are in bots, that they might end up generating something close to what I originally wrote, but off on important details. That readers would actually get to know me less as a result. Sales would dip, naturally. Maybe people would even ask to create weird J fanfic that they'd spin off following some AI-generated version of me instead of the real thing, because by that point it'll be more profitable to generate fake personalities than to pay real ones, which, believe it or not, they're actually doing already. They're making their own fake AI influencers. They also don't respect the art that they're using to build their products, because if they did, they wouldn't be stealing it in the first place. But that's not what has me worried. I'm worried that you'll be able to get my books before I'm even done writing them. Like I said, I've been working on my fiction for over a decade. Those books that Meta allegedly stole were written back from 2010 to 2013. The joke is on Meta, however, because those are by far my worst books, but they're a part of a universe that I've been working on for over 15 years now. There's something like 50 books in that universe. I want to make movies out of them, TV shows, assuming those things still exist in the future. I have a plan. I want to tell this story, not just one book at a time, but I want each piece to contribute to an overarching story. The bigger narrative to unfold before you in real time. I want there to be a massive payoff at the end, something deeply satisfying. I decided to unpublish the 8 books that were already out in the world because I realized I wanted to take the time to make sure they were all aligned with each other and the rest that were to come. In the case of the early ones, maybe rewrite them entirely. Somehow, I am fortunate enough that YouTube became my full-time job in 2018. And by somehow, I mean specifically through the direct support of my patrons. I didn't make any money off AdSense, I didn't have any sponsors, but I did have a bunch of crazy internet strangers who loved what I did, enough that they wanted it to continue, enough so that they were willing to pay me to keep it going. It was the most life-changing experience that I've ever had. Not just because it meant I could focus on my work and drop the numerous side gigs, but because each and every time I got a new patron, it put another tiny weight on the scale in favor of my own self-worth. What it meant for my writing was I could take a step back and breathe. Well, initially I meant I could take a break because making a video every day and trying to write books was too much for me in the midst of moving to a new country and simultaneously going bankrupt, but I no longer put my financial hopes in my writing. I decided to let it simmer rather than cook under pressure. What worries me is that I'm going to spend the next 5 to 10 years working behind the scenes to create this fictional world so I can share it with you. That I'll work hard to make something I'm proud of, an experience intended to unfold over time with twists and turns and some satisfying surprises, and that before I can even publish it, some tech bro is going to scan the files on my computer, suck them into an algorithm, and spew them onto the internet for his own profit. Half-finished stories, spoilers, naked for all to see. Forget the loss in book sales or box office revenue. The true robbery here is that I'll never get to release them on my own. The root experience of creating art is in sharing it with others and watching it become theirs. In this nightmare future, there's a high likelihood that I don't even get to watch people experience my work for the first time. And if that's the case, along with everything else I've already listed out, then it makes me wonder, what's the fucking point? Now, you might be asking, dear viewer, how does this affect me? I don't write books or make YouTube videos. Here's the thing. It already is affecting you. The data that my creative work produces has been used to generate AI slop. Google uses these videos to train their models, whether or not I want them to. The LLMs have used my blogs, my books, and probably transcripts from these videos to do the same. But you're producing data too. Perhaps directly if you've ever made a Reddit post or left a comment on Instagram. Perhaps indirectly as you back up photos of your family to the cloud or chat away on Facebook Messenger. Even just carrying your phone around creates data for companies to mine. It may not all get used to write bad poems or animate dancing cappuccinos, but it is being used. Currently, in order to influence you to buy things, to feel things, to believe things. If it can succeed at that, what else can it do? Like I said, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few years, and my feelings and opinions have evolved quite a bit. I couldn't fit it all into one video if I tried at this point. I went to this exposition on AI a few months back at the Jeu de Paume in Paris, and it struck me just how fascinating and fun some elements of these new technologies can be. But it also struck me just how big of an impact it's having on the environment, on our society, and on our mental health as we start to dissociate from reality. I'll read the journal entry that I wrote after visiting the exhibit for you. It starts out a little rough because then I got into it. What is the point? Why create for these platforms if they're only going to steal what we make and use it to profit without us / cut us out? What is content? It used to be for advertising. Now it's training data. If everything hinges on attention, removed from the humanity behind it, then the intrinsic value of what holds that attention is reduced to that which holds attention. The major, possibly only incentive then, is to find the most scroll-stopping, addictive content possible in a race to the bottom that leaves no room for moral consideration. The soul of the viewer is discounted, and thus there can be no soul in the creation. Even before AI theft, content creation naturally led to attention hacking and antisocial systems. Now those systems are turning on those of us feeding them. Value creation is dead or dying. Value extraction is all that remains. And once all value has been extracted, how can a system built on productivity and endless growth survive? If the snake succeeds in eating its own tail, at what point does the head pop off? The deal we struck was an exchange of this value, whether by labor, creativity, or a combination of both. But labor has been devalued to the point of creating problems ranging from the gig economy to an all-out masculinity crisis. Creative output is being stolen to automate as much knowledge work as possible, not fueling or engendering any actual creativity of its own, just upping efficiency and filling space. Why do we continue to participate in this system when that participation offers rapidly diminishing returns and increases its ability to straight up replace us with every effort we put towards using it for our own fading hopes and dreams? We are being lured to our own demise through dopamine addictions in the guise of entertainment and aspirational fantasy. We've moved from value extraction to the pursuit of full control. If you create the all-powerful AI, where everyone turns for knowledge, assistance, and digital companionship, you control the foundations of truth, the possible pathways to action, and the core elements of human fulfillment. They tell us they cannot stop it as if they would resist it, if only they could. But if they don't do it, then someone else would. And wouldn't it be better if they had it, and by implication we had it, than someone like the Chinese? But they do want the power, and just because if you stop punching babies, someone else will end up punching all the babies before you, that doesn't mean it's preferable that you're the baby puncher. I would rather we stop punching babies altogether, much like I would prefer that we stop stealing the collective works of humanity and using it to render ourselves obsolete. Regardless of what they tell us, we do not have to choose or permit this. The genie may be out of the bottle, but we still have a hand on its shackles, at least for the moment. So what do? I just went to the opening of a collaboration between a few of my favorite artists. For one, it's just nice to be around people who are excited to see something new, something that fills up a real space. I've been thinking a lot about how to peel back the layers and regain some control over my life, and there were a few things that stood out to me in this show that really aligned with what I've been feeling. A big thank you to Addie, of course, for inviting me. For one, my obvious take is that I saw decades of mastery on the canvas and in the tiles. Damien Hirst, Shepard Fairey, and Invader have all been at this a long time, and it shows in every way you'd imagine when you look up close at their work. This is something we lose when we use generative AI to quote-unquote create. It's the process of doing the hard work to learn how to draw, how to paint, how to build that brings satisfaction in the end. Skipping to a finished result is fun at first, but as ethereal as any magic trick. Amazing the first time, interesting the second, and when you figure out what's happening, never interesting again. The less obvious take was how the entire collaboration was filled with joy, generosity, and humility. I almost didn't go. I walked into the gallery anxious and really feeling the deep sadness that I always struggle with, but which has been so close to the surface since my mom's passing. That sadness was washed away within 20 minutes of wandering through the show. I've never had social media or AI slop make me feel better like that. Of course I went home and watched Exit Through the Gift Shop immediately after. The story about how Banksy and Shepard Fairey inadvertently created Mr. Brainwash, an earnest Frenchman who learned what he believed was their formula for success as a street artists, and who copied it shamelessly.
It's like a piece that I made. It's like I changed Elvis. He had a guitar, and I put him a toy.
And then skipped straight to the end with his own insane gallery showing. There's this line from Banksy when he likens Mr. Brainwash to Andy Warhol that really stood out to me.
He's kind of the rightful heir to Andy Warhol, in a way. Andy Warhol made a statement by repeating famous icons until they became meaningless, but he was extremely iconic in the way that he did it. But then Terry really made them meaningless.
AI slop is effectively doing the same thing. All that Mr. Brainwash and generative AI see is the output, the finished product. There is no appreciation for the craft, for the discipline, nor for the sense of self-expression reflected in the results. They just see pop icon mixed with random object, and they split out the rendition of the same thing. They have an uncanny ability to replicate things we love, but the result is meaningless. We stand to lose a lot individually if we stop striving to master our passions and our hobbies. If we give up on doing the work, on discipline. The show I visited in London was so unique because each artist in the collaboration has such a clear iconography developed over decades of iteration and dedication, and they managed to bring equal shares to the table. None of them stepped on or outshone the others, and being lucky enough to talk with Shepard for a bit, thank you Steve, I got to hear just how generous and supportive each artist was behind the scenes. The sheer effort they put in and the sense of solidarity it generated really come through. It wasn't about the results as much as that matters, so much as the process. And the show is still ongoing for the next 6 months. If you happen to be in London, you should definitely check it out. We can still log off. We can still touch grass. One of the biggest bullshit lines I've heard about generative AI is that it democratizes creativity. There is nothing stopping anyone from picking up a pen and putting it to paper. Creativity is already democratized because it exists in each and every one of us from birth. We just need to put it to practice. To be creative is intrinsic to what it means to be human. And we take that very core element of our humanity and hand it over to the tech oligarchs at our peril.
You might have noticed that I filmed a little bit on location in London for this video, and you may have also noticed that I've been spending a lot of time in London over the last few years. And part of the reason, I'll tell you one part someday, but a big part of it was because I was thinking about expanding Paris in my pocket to London, which I'm not going to be doing because I need to focus on getting as deep into Paris. Like, I've not even scratched the surface of what we can do in Paris, and so London will have to wait. However, that doesn't mean that I don't have a crap ton of great food, coffee, beer, wine recommendations for you, and I'm always trying new places whenever I come, like this one that just opened a few months ago in the place where I used to have a secret toilet in Spitalfields Market, and now you gotta pay to get to the toilet. As of releasing this video, all of those locations are going to be made available for the first time in one place on my personal Mapster, which is only available to Wanderer level patrons and above. If you're an active patron and you're at the Wanderer level or above, you're not only gonna get all my London recommendations on my Mapster now for the first time ever, but also all my recommendations globally, I guess, just kind of as I'm wandering. Like, I was in Montpellier for vacation recently, and I found a few spots there that I really liked, and that's how you can get them. Now, because Mapster used to be like the #1 draw for people because it was my recommendations for Paris, and it's definitely been watered down because I sell my guide, which has all my recommendations for Paris in it. So in order to sweeten the deal, I'm removing all of my recommendations from Paris except for my top 10 coffee shops in my gold label and my top 10 favorite everything else in my black label, and you can only get those collected and called out in that way on my Mapster. And where I don't know where we're headed with creative work moving forward, I don't want to doom and gloom you into becoming a patron. If you've gotten any value out of my work, and if you enjoy it, and if you can afford the cost of a beer once a month, then I would really appreciate it if you became a patron right now at patreon.com/jswanson, where you'll get all these recommendations, sneak peeks to my videos, digital wallpapers, and if you're at the higher levels, postcards and prints of photos I've taken on my travels. And if you can't afford to join in, do not worry. I'm so grateful just that you're here. Please continue watching and know that I am so happy just to have you along for my journey as I continue to share it. And I hope you'll stick around. And of course, thanks to Deborah J. Ball and all of my patrons for making this possible. Now turn off your screen, go touch grass, or maybe make something new.